Welcome to our first spring 2024 workshop for the Center for Music Education at Georgia College. Today, we're excited to have Dion Muldrow speaking to us about programming for rural bands. Mr. Muldrow is the band director at Appalachian High School, and he has 20 plus years of teaching experience. He is also in Georgia College's Master's of Music Education degree program and is set to graduate this summer. So we're very excited to have our own Dion Muldrow teaching us today about programming for rural bands.
All right, thank you, Dr. Holmes Davis. As you said, I'm Dion Muldrow. Let's see if I can get my slides to work here. So a little bit about me. I'm director of bands at Appalachian High School. I am past vice president of performance evaluations. I am District 14 chair. I've been teaching 23 years. 21 of those have been in a rural community. My favorite titles, though, are husband and father. My wife, Rachel, teaches at Westside Middle School, and my daughters are 13 and 11, and they're at Piano Festival right now. So as we move forward, let's get into this a little bit. I think we have to start this with defining exactly what rural means. The dictionary says that rural is basically a countryside and a population of 500 or less in a city. This definition has changed over time. My rural area has grown significantly in the last 20 years, but at the end of the day, I still see lots of farms and things like that around us. So if you're in one of those areas, that presents some unique challenges for our band programs and for our programming. So the first thing you need to do is know who's in your community. So I would recommend, if you're in a rural area, get on census.gov and look up some of the questions that I have on the screen. You know, what's the average income? What's the average home value? What percentage of your parents have high school degrees? What percentage have college degrees? And what's the poverty rate? This is not to be judgmental. This is just so you know who's coming through your doors, who's providing the support for your band and for your kids. So at the end of the day, a lower median income means that parents may not be able to provide quality equipment. You may not be able to have all the instruments that you want in your band room. A higher income value means the kids are going to have good things. You're going to have good financial support for your program. The degrees between high school and college is huge. When I started at Appalachian High School, there was not value for education, which means the parents weren't going to necessarily value music education because they didn't care about a high school degree. When you have college degrees there's just a different mindset. Parents value the kids going to school, value all the activities their kids can be involved. And the next one, the poverty rate's giant. When I taught in Athens, there was a 22% poverty rate. My kids weren't worried about David Holsinger. They were worried about their next meal. And that drove how I picked music for those kids, because you have to think about what they have going on outside of school. And that's an easy little thing to do. Like I said, just get on census.gov and look up a couple of those questions. That'll help you know who you're working with in your band room. So the next thing you need to know is what's going on in your school. Does your administration know that you even have a concert program? I know in some smaller systems, rural systems, the principals think that bands play at football games and they need to have a pep band. They're not worried about what's going on in your concert program. And they may not even know that the concert program exists. So you're going to need to talk to your administration and get them on the same page. Say, hey, this is important. Like, you want this thing at a football game, you want this band at a parade, we need to have a concert program. What other challenges will you face at the school level? In rural programs, scheduling's a big nightmare, especially in our smaller schools. Your band kids are going to be your smartest kids. We're all band kids. We were the ones that were asked to do everything. So I fight a lot of AP versus band class. How do you deal with that? What are you going to do to make sure those kids can do the things that they want to do and still be a part of the band program? How big is your band? If your community sticks to the definition of 500 or less in a rural community, your band program might only have 20 kids. And that's going to drive how you program for your band. In a lot of rural communities, the budget's an issue, and it's different in each community. I am the center of 4 or 5 different rural counties. The county south of us, the bands have a huge budget. There's a lot of factories in that county, along with the farmland. The county to the west of us just has a higher median income, so they have more money from parents. My county gives us just enough money to say they donated to the band, and we get a little bit, but budget affects what you can do with your instrumentation. It affects what you can do as far as what you can and cannot purchase. What are your band members involved in? And again, in these smaller communities, in our rural communities, our band members do everything. I had a band member that marched flute, but played center on the football team. My current drum major, is also captain of an academic team and takes a bunch of AP classes. So I have to program based on their availability to practice the music that I'm intending to perform. And the last thing on the slide that I mentioned is what have your band members experienced in the past? If you're entering your first job in a rural community, you're going to need to know what they experienced. Find Susie drum major, find Johnny band captain, ask them some questions. Did you do concerts last year? If not, would you like to do concerts? What did you perform? How often did you perform? Kids will be very honest about their experience. Their experience drives what we can pick and how we program for them. I taught in a school where I sat down and the drum major told me they had marching season and concert season. I had to ask her to explain that. What does that mean? And they did marching band from July through December. And they did 2 songs on the Christmas concert. And then they did 1 concert in May. And that was it. Those kids were exposed to 5 pieces of band literature before I started there the year before. So I had to sit down and go, how do I convince these kids that concerts are important? And so I had to take a baby step. I was like, we're going to do a fall concert. We're going to take everybody in the band, put them in one band. We're going to do a fall concert. We're going to play music that I think you might like. And then it organically evolved from there. And then that rural program turned into a band program that went from 1 band to having 3 bands, 4 bands by the time I left. So their experience is huge, and that also affects their parents' experience, because at the end of the day, in our rural communities, the parents aren't always concerned with playing the Persichetti Symphony. They may not know it. They may not understand that type of literature for a band. They may be okay with you just doing Star Wars and calling it a day. So all of that to say, the community, the school, and then the students, they drive your programming more than anything else in a rural setting. I feel like in the more urban, suburban settings, there's so many people to choose from in those schools that the band director has a little more autonomy on what they pick. And I'm not saying that we let the community tell us what to play, but you got to be conscious of what's going on for them. So now we're going to get into some of the nuts and bolts of what's happening in a rural community. Assess the damage. That trombone is not in my band room, but I've seen one like that in a band room. So you got to look what instruments are in your space. And a lot of times in these rural band rooms, there's just not quality equipment, and that has a huge effect on what we can do with our music. So, for instance, when I started at Appalachian High School, I had a marimba that had been scratched up, a xylophone that had been scratched up, a vibraphone that the pedal didn't work, that chimes had been thrown off the truck, and the bell set had no felts. That limits what I can do. I can't do a lot of David Gillingham with that equipment, So you got to look up what's in the room. You got to look at what you have. Does it work? I had an oboe that I'm pretty sure had like 7 pads missing, and it looked like it hadn't been played since like 1950. Nobody's playing oboe, but it takes your Granger out of your arsenal of pieces to play. Do you have a full complement of percussion equipment? I had enough equipment to say I had a percussion section, not enough to do some of the things that are written today. You do a Randall Standridge piece, especially some of his upper level music, there's a lot of percussion equipment in there. I wasn't doing that 8 years ago when I started Appalachia. I had to really think about what I was playing based on the instruments in the room. Then do the instruments work? We had 3 tenor saxophones that were bought in 2000. I started there in 2016. I'm pretty sure those instruments have been played and not really worked on for 16 years. So they weren't fully functional. So I couldn't play things like, I couldn't play a piece that had a low B flat in it because that key wouldn't seal. And at the time, I didn't have a budget to get it fixed. So when you look at that stuff, you just got to assess what's there and then figure out what's usable and what's not, and then create a hierarchy of what you're going to get fixed, so that you can begin to play. And then the last bullet point is kind of funny. Are there band members? Are there instruments for everyone? Sad state of affairs at my school. We were sharing instruments, and even post COVID, we're back to having to share equipment again. So you got to find a way to get horns in people's hands. A lot of what I deal with in my rural community too, as far as instruments go, is Amazon's the devil as far as instruments go. My kids will buy a Mendini or Old Glory or whatever from Amazon, come in and want to play it, and it doesn't play well, or it'll break, and then I've got somebody sitting without an instrument. All of this is going to guide how you choose your music, because you can't pick a song and not have the instrument in your band room to play it. Okay. Next thing, who are you teaching? You got to know that. You got to know what the kids have experienced. You got to know what they like, don't like, but you got to look and know how many people are in your ensemble. What grade is your ensemble? I know there's a community about half hour from me that the band is 6 through 12. So you got beginners and seniors in the same program. How do you mitigate that when you program? And it's going to be kind of pick some pieces that are in the middle. What is the instrumentation of the group? So, do you have every instrument on the score in the band room? Or are you missing instruments? What sections are not fully complete? Like a lot of people like to have 6 to 12 clarinets in their band program. If you got 3 clarinets, that's going to make a difference in what you're able to play. Are you missing full sections? Do you not have any tubas? Do you not have bass clarinets? Do you not have any flutes? I judged the band in District 4. The gentleman did a masterful job, had no flute players, but found a way to get those parts covered. So how do you mitigate some of those things? But you got to know those things before you start picking music. I find that oftentimes we pick what we like, not what our kids need based on who's in the room. So these are again, these are all notes that you have to make before you start looking at scores to pick things. The next thing, we got Hercules here. Where are your strong players? You got a strong flute player, do something with a flute solo. You got an all-state trumpet player, find something with a trumpet solo in it. But you also got to balance that with where are your struggling players. If you have a strong flute player and a weak flute section, that does change how you program things. Where are your strong sections? I got a slamming trombone section in my top band. We're thinking about doing 76 trombones this year because they're that good. Where are your weak sections? If your low reeds are weak, you got to stay away from a Granger. You have to stay away from having them exposed. So how do you hide these things? How do you highlight your strong players? If you got a smaller group with a decent instrumentation, fine tunes that have big block scoring in them. Post COVID, my concert band had 2 trombones, 2 baritones, a tuba, a bass clarinet, and a bari sax in it. So I looked for pieces that had those instruments blocked together. That's how you help with some of that. For trying to hide some of those weaker players, you try to find music that's all on one part. Definitely don't go 3 parts deep in a clarinet section of 4. Make sure that you keep it down to 1 or 2 parts. Unfortunately, for most music, though, the clarinet parts split pretty early, so you're going to have to mitigate that. So, highlight your strong, try to hide your weak, or create security and numbers to help with that. So, how do you compensate for missing or small instrumentation? I mentioned it a little bit. They're flex arrangements. So, where It's not flute, clarinet, trumpet, trombone, boom, listed down the score. It'll say part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4, part 5. And then in those top 3 parts have a certain instrumentation that you can rotate the parts through. And the bottom 2 do the same thing. So you can turn around and give a saxophone player a part 1 to cover a melody if a flute's not there. Those are great. Those are newer and becoming more and more popular since 2020. And it's great for the type of brand programs that we teach. No matter where you teach in the rural program, there's going to be a band with an incomplete section or missing instrumentation. Also, like I was saying earlier, find songs that are written for reduced instrumentation. Look for something that has a flute, 2 clarinets, saxophone, trumpet, trombone, baritone, tuba, and block them together. That really helps when you're missing something, and it helps when your bands are small as well. And then the other thing you can do to compensate is straight up rewrite some parts. I remember back in about 2003, me and a buddy of mine got in an argument about this. The composer wants to hear their music played the way they heard it when they wrote it. So if you're missing a horn section, like I did for years, a saxophone's a good substitute. Especially those kids with a really sweet sound, rewrite it for saxophone. The band that I mentioned didn't have any flute players. They did the Whole Singer Childhood Hymn, and he had a really solid first clarinet player, so he put that person on the flute part along with Bell with soft mallets. And that helps a lot. Don't be afraid to rescore a piece to fit your band. I mean, at the end of the day, it's to help the kids be successful. It's to help the composer's intent come across. So those are some ways you get around some of those instrumentation hurdles that we will face in our rural communities because we don't have everything in the score sometimes. So we've talked instrumentation, you talked community, you got it all worked out. Programming considerations. So these are things that you have to think about when you pick your music, especially in the communities that we teach in. What season is the concert? All because you're doing a fall concert doesn't mean you have to play off the GMEA required music list that we do for LGPE. I got in a rut of doing that, and I found that I was beginning to repeat pieces at a quicker rate just because every concert came off of that list. Even at wintertime, I wasn't doing Christmas music. I was doing a winter concert with a tune with a Christmas flavor in the concert. You will beat yourself into the wall trying to pick all your music off of that list. You need to make sure you create some variety. So what I've done to fight that little monkey is in the fall, I'm like, okay, I'm going to try to pick some things off the list, but I'm going to pull in a pop tune or something like that. But I went to theming my concerts, and it helped my community rally around my band because the GMEA list is a lot of heavy music. And a lot of times our parents don't understand some of that lit, and that's not a knock on them. It's just the truth. It's the reality of what's going on. They just don't understand, and sometimes, frankly, they just don't care about it. You can play the whole suite in E flat and play it masterfully. Parents may not care about it. So I do a Halloween concert. Everybody wears like a costume. I wear a costume. We do a trunk or treat. It's a whole community thing. And it helps our audience understand what we're playing. And when they understand what we're playing, some of the time, they will support us 100% of the time. At Christmas time, I tried to do minor alterations one time. It was a little too much for my community. They were like, I didn't like that. They didn't like that feel of what should be festive songs in minor keys. So we went the other way. This past year, I picked each of my band's Christmas concerts were 5 minutes or less. They were short. One group did Christmas Africana. We did Brazilian sleigh bells. We did You Better Slay, that Gerard Hall tune that just came out. And they loved it. And because of that, I can do some heavier music later on. And as you do things like that, you'll find that your band's going to be in higher demand, which means you're going to have to play more things. Veterans Day, international nights, things like that. And that helps get the community behind you, and it'll give you some flexibility in your programming. Other considerations, who are you performing for? Again, parents, different than playing for judges. You're playing for judges at LGPE, you have to pick off the list. It's easier to pick off the list if you're not picking off the list all the time. And theming a concert helps you with that. How long is your how long is your performance going to be? I found that in my community, shorter is better. Shorter is better. The attention span of my kids is not what I would like it to be sometimes. Sometimes intellectually they're not there to play some of the standards of literature on the band of band, but their parents echo the same thing. So think about how long you want to play. It may not be appropriate to do an 8 minute and 8 minute and 8 minute in a concert. A 30-minute concert in a gym in a rural community is a long time for one band. So you might look at how long you have, how long the music's going to be. The other thing you want to look at is preparation time. I found in the fall that I had 4 concerts in 6 weeks. So I went through and I was like, for Veterans Day, we did our Halloween. Veterans Day was 2 weeks later. I went ahead and just picked easier music for my wind ensemble to play. And we played Veterans Day. It was a great concert. Everybody loved it. And it's okay. It's okay to play easier music to fit what's going on. So all of that, again, just help drive your mind toward programming, okay? So now, finding the needle in the haystack. How do you find the right piece of music? So you got to go down and say, what's the goal of your program? What are you setting out to accomplish on this concert? At Christmas time, I want it to be fun. I want it to be clean. Yeah, that's what I want. Halloween, same idea. So I go and I just start looking around to find pieces that fit the bill. How clean would you like your performance to be? I don't believe it's ever okay to do a concert that's not good. I feel like no matter where you teach, you can find music that your kids can be successful in. And I've got some friends that we argue about this. The next one, should you push the ensemble musically? I don't think you should ever push students in front of people. I don't think kids should ever feel uncomfortable in a concert. I think they should feel uncomfortable in class. We should push them in class. We should use our warm-up to push them musically and then program appropriately to what you're teaching in warm-up. So with that, smaller numbers in your ensemble are going to need sometimes less advanced music. Sometimes big bands need easier music as well, so all hard to clean. And then another one that should be common sense, but people miss on this: what keys, time signatures, and things are your students familiar with? At the end of the day, if they've not played in concert D flat, they don't need to play a song in concert D flat. You need to make sure that you're teaching the kids what they need to know for the concert. And it's okay not to play the hardest stuff on the list. Difficult is not always best. Difficult does not equate to great, doesn't equate to good. Difficult just means that you're playing something hard. Awesome. That's great. I love playing some easy music. I love being able to get through a piece and make music out of it. So think about that when you're programming, So how do you find said music? Here we go. Listen. Go to concerts. Go to lots of concerts if you can. Go to GMEA in-service conference. You will hear lots of great things there. At the end of the day, I find very little that I can bring back to my band program. Not because my kids can't play it. I think sometimes that program is geared toward music educators. It's geared toward band directors, right? My kids intellectually can't always wrap their head around that music that you hear at GMEA. But it's good for the soul. It fills us up. And your bands eventually will get there. Go to LGPE, not just to play, go to listen, and listen a lot. So what we do is we take all 3 Appalachian bands on the same day and we park. I order Chick-fil-A so that they can eat lunch, dinner, whatever meal there. And we sit and listen. That we're the audience for the better part of 6 hours when we go to this event. And it's great because my kids hear things they like. I hear things I like, and then I have an idea where the idiosyncrasies of the piece are by listening. Make sure You do that. And then I take a day off and go where I'm not on band director duty, and I just go and listen to music. And my principal, and your principal, if you ask, will give you professional time for that because it's going to make you better in the school. Then I go to neighboring schools, communities like mine, and see what they're playing. I ask those band directors, what are they playing? What are you playing? I try to go to their concerts as well, so I can learn lit, hear the idiosyncrasies, see what the instrumentation is like. That will help you find literature. Use your colleagues. I email friends all the time. I email my mentors all the time. I need this level piece to contrast this piece. You give me some ideas, and I'll listen and listen and listen, and then I'll look at my list of my strengths and my weaknesses, and then I'll evaluate whether or not my kids can play it from there. I also will allow my kids to make suggestions for me. I say, be careful, because I had a student suggest that we play Asphalt Cocktail by Mackey. And I was like, there are not many colleges playing that, bro. We're not doing that here. At the time, I was at Cedar Shoals High School. I was like, we're barely hanging on some of this level 5. We were trying to play Holsinger. We're trying to play Haven Dance. I was like, we're struggling with Haven Dance. Think that's a little too much. But to flip that coin, one year at LGPE, my kids heard, I can't remember, The Cave You Fear, and loved it. And I pulled it out and we played it because it fit the band that I had in the room. And you'll find when kids suggest music, they work harder when you play it because it's something that they have married themselves to playing. And that's awesome when they do that. So that's how you can find some literature just in your own little sphere. You can use social media. I am a Georgia Band Directors Group Facebook junkie. And that's the picture from the band directors group right there. I will get on air and ask a question about anything. Because I don't expect judgment and I expect good answers. So I'll get on there and ask about literature. There's a wealth of knowledge from those guys out there. And there's guys and girls out there. They'll make a post and then they'll follow it up. And you'll get a lot of good follow-up answers. Follow your friends on social media. Follow your band director friends on social media. Most of us will post a concert somewhere. Most of us will put a post about a piece we're playing somewhere. That's a great place to learn literature, especially follow friends that teach in scenarios like you. And I follow band Facebook pages that are in scenarios like me. I follow Jackson County, Oconee Middle, Loganville High School. Those are all Cedar Shoals High School. I taught there. All of those places have social media accounts, and they all are in rural areas. Different levels of rural, but all in rural areas, and they geographically are close to me, which means I can get a hold of them and talk to them about what they've played, but then I also can borrow the music if I need it. Make sure you follow your friends there. Follow the Rural Band Directors Group on Facebook. That's a newer one that came out a little bit ago. People post about music and the challenges of teaching band in rural areas a lot. Follow composers. Randall Standards is awesome. Julie Giroux's awesome. Every so often, they'll just put some free music out there. Download it, look at it, see if it fits. Download it, look at it, see if it fits. That'll help you a bunch. Takes a lot of weight off your shoulders. Follow publishing companies. Every now and then, they'll throw out something free for you to look at. And again, take all the stuff I've talked about before and assess that music and see if it fits your program. Again, this kind of works for everybody, but specifically in the rural setting, we feel so detached from everybody else that social media is key to making you feel connected. That's important. Making you feel connected and supported in the band world. One of the things, and I should have talked about this earlier, but I just thought about this. One of the specific challenges I have felt, as I said, connected about being in a rural area is getting people into my school to help my kids and to help them to see my programming in a different light. You're close to somebody. I mean, even if it's 30 miles away, somebody will come in and work with your kids at any point in time just to help them to see what you see in them. I was able to bring in Dr. Towner from GCSU came to my band room, and I know that's a hike for him to come out there, but it was huge for him to drive from Milledgeville to Winder, Georgia, to talk to my country kids about playing Vesuvius or playing Blue Ridge Reel or playing Regenesis. It was huge. And it helped them to see the validity of our program and help them to see that they are bigger than being rural. That's a huge thing. So sorry about that tangent, but that challenge can be overcome. Even if you, not Skype, we don't use Skype anymore. Even if you do a Teams meet and have somebody come like Zoom in and talk to your kids, that's huge for the growth of your program. And again, for the support and how you pick music for your kids. So honesty is best. So as you talk about asking friends and throwing these things out there to people, you have to be honest. When you're seeking advice from colleagues, be real about the strengths and limitations of your program. Don't overinflate the strength of your trumpet section when they're just okay. When you're asking somebody to help you pick a song for your band. Also don't underestimate what your kids do, but don't talk about a clarinet section of 3 like they're a clarinet section of 12. Make sure you're real. That'll help your friends give you good suggestions. It'll help your mentors help you pick music correctly. And sometimes it's hard. I spent 2 years at Cedar Shoals, or at least 1 year at my previous school where I didn't program for the people in the room. I programmed for what I thought I could teach them. And that was terrible. And I wish I had that 2014, 2015 school year back, because we felt it in performance evaluation. And there were all kind of challenges that happened. We went to an ABC schedule. I graduated a senior class of all-stars. And I just didn't look and say, hey, this is not the band. I know last year's band is not the band I have right now. And so it can be tragic for kids if we're not real with what's in front of us. And it's okay. And if they're weak players, it's our job to make them better. It's our job to create a warm-up program, a technique building program that builds their facility to get them to where we want to be. And at the end of the day, in that year, I hurt the morale of some of those kids in that band. And that's hard to take back. But I learned from it. And now I maybe do things a little too easy, but a little easier is way more fun than too hard. So again, all that started with, be honest with yourself, with your colleagues, and with the kids. They need to know how good or how much work they need to do as well. Next thing, don't be deceived by J.W. Pepper when you're picking music. Easy, very easy, medium, not the same. Not every easy is an easy, and not every advanced is not always advanced. You actually look at the score. 1 year I was like, this is a medium band. I'm going to play this song and this song. I was going to play October and Vesuvius. This is the year I was talking about at Cedar Shoals. They were not a medium band. There were other mediums that fit them better. Those pieces were harder than I gave them credit for. And I was told about that. And I learned a lot when I was told about that. So when you're getting on Pepper and you use the search string and you click, I think I can play easy. Click on it. It's going to give you a whole bunch of stuff. Go to top selling. That's a good way to find good literature if a bunch of people bought it. And then look at the scores and make sure that your strengths are accentuated and your limitations are diminished. Instrumentation, again, yes. So here's the biggie. In rural areas, some of the bands are going to be bigger, some are going to be smaller. There are challenges that come with both. In those large ensembles and larger bands in our areas, sometimes you just can't get things clean because the kids, again, they're doing a lot of stuff. So it's going to be hard to make sure that they're practicing to get you what you want in performance product. So you're going to want to make sure that you choose in a manner that you can teach the bulk of the work in class. Now, the flip side of that coin is that small ensemble is just hard. You're in a 6 through 12 school. You've got 25 kids. You got to be creative in how you program. You got to be willing to do the edits. You got to be willing to play the music that the kids can play. And I put in composer score in ways that can be helpful. Composers nowadays are scoring for children. You know, if you look at some of the old standards of literature that were written in the 50s and 60s, they were largely scoring just to write a band piece because we needed band music written. Nowadays, Brian Baumages, Randall Standards, Robert Smith, Mike Story, all these composers are writing with kids in mind, and some of their literature is written with small ensembles in mind. Explore those things to help your kids be successful. So I know that was a lot. But in closing, and I know I'm a little bit early, and maybe I'll have some questions here at the end. Embrace the community that you teach in. The challenges, I'll say it this way, the joys and benefits of being in a rural community where people know you and they know your band and they love the kids in your band, and you can go to a store and somebody recognize you by name, far outweigh the challenges. Um, far outweigh the challenges. Bands in rural communities can play just as well, if not better, than bands in some of our larger, more urban and suburban areas. You have to have a band director that wants to do the hard work, that wants to do the hard work to learn the community, to meet the community where they are. So you might have to play Star Wars. You might have to play Aliens Landing. You might have to play Thriller. You might have to do Brazilian sleigh bells. You might have to do some pieces that don't fit our collegiate idea of great music to get to some of that cool stuff. I can tell you, like, for reals, my wind ensemble played Bandoween last year, but then turned around in the spring and did morning, noon, and night in Vienna. It's all about embracing and loving the people that are there, and then being real about who's in your room and teaching that person, not the idea of the band you want, but the person in your room. But at the end of the day, it's all about loving the kids and giving them the best experience that you can. I know I'm a little bit early. If anybody has any questions, I can't see a chat or anything right now.
If you have a question, if you would unmute your camera so that we can see you if possible. If not, we'd still love to hear your question, and you can either say it out loud or you can put it in the chat and I will share it.
I don't have a question, but more of like something that you said that I'm always a fan of about programming music that students like, in addition to the standards, because I've always felt, and this was even long before I started the MAT program, that you want to go with kind of the trends, like the movie trends, whether it's like Pixar Cars or the Red Panda Girl or something like that, in addition maybe like a Mozart piece or like, a Handel piece. It's almost like, I don't want to say the word compromise, but it's like you're also taking what the students are interested in and then connecting it with maybe the composers from the 1700s, 1800s, maybe have like a theme, because they also feel like you want to include other cultures and diversity instead of just doing the standards and this is what we're going to do, and almost like have a kind of like a authoritative type of way. And I really appreciate how you said, ask the students. I think because the more that they feel that they're involved in learning pieces, then of course, like you said, they're going to work harder because they're so interested. And they're also going to, maybe not at first, but they're going to over time take that the workmanship that they're putting into those fun pieces, like a Toy Story piece, or maybe like a Halloween piece they get to dress up, and then you have like maybe a Beethoven piece or something that's kind of similar in sound, and it's like they can connect and see how it relates, and also bring that work into the more standard pieces. So I appreciate your views on that.
Thank you. I thought it was I have found with some of that, like you mentioned, some of that Disney Pixar stuff or rock music, that's some of the hardest that we
Sure.
ever play. And I don't know why we have this thing as band directors where we feel like that's not good enough. But I remember being a young teacher and having a friends like, oh, I can't believe you're doing movie themes on the spring concert. And I was like, it's harder than some of the stuff I just played at LGPE. Like,
Mhm.
it's rhythmically difficult. And I wish we could break that wall down.
I think if I can interject, and um, I think that it may have to do with the difference between being a musician and being a teacher. Because throughout music history, we've had this idea of a canon that is more worthy, that is more complex, that is more something than all of the other music. But we as teachers know that with learners, if you don't have a construct in the brain already, you physically cannot learn.
Hmm.
So when we're, when we're only musicians, then we can program, like Victoria's a strings player, so she's going back to Mozart and Haydn and all of these guys. And certainly that music is worthy of being played and should be played. But we can sometimes forget that our students don't have a 17th century construct in their brain. So what they can learn from that may be limited by their previous experience. So, but if we're only educators, we can swing too far the other way and we can play just what our students have constructs to learn.
That's
And
true.
then they don't learn the standard literature and they don't learn this deep history of music that we have. So it may be incumbent upon us as successful music teachers to get in the middle here. And like Dion said, if we choose some of both, then we can play things that keep them interested long enough to stay to play Mozart.
Yeah, I found it's interesting with my kids because they look forward to some of those fun concerts. And then after that, they're chomping at the bit to play something serious.
Sure.
By the time we did a Halloween, a Veterans Day, that was real easy, and then a Christmas concert that was really easy. When I pulled out "Star Above, Shine Brightly" by Balmages, they're ready to play some serious literature, um, and they got the feel they feel like they've got multiple skill sets now, even though it's all the same skill set. They just think that rock music or popular music just feels different than classical music, but they like both of them, and that was the bridge for me was meeting them where they are a little bit to pull them to where I want them to be.
Outstanding. Yes. And that's actually when I teach music and civ classes or general music classes, that's the reason I teach music history backwards. Because our learners have something in common with Miles Davis that they don't have in common with Hildegard de Bingen. So if we start with Miles and we work backwards, then we can build those constructs as we go. And then, like you said, they do latch on to some things that they previously wouldn't have.
Excellent. I wish I had you for music history. We started at the beginning, and
Well,
that
so
was
did I.
tough. It was
Yeah.
tough.
So Solange is appreciative of your points on seasonal band concerts.
Thank you. They're fun, and people come out in droves for those concerts. They just come to expect them now. So
Sure. Do you have any other ideas? You talked about, skill building in the warm up or in your, planning the technical things that you're going to teach. So
hmm
some of our pre-service ensemble teachers, they have trouble getting away from just a rehearsal of repertoire and actually teaching skills. Do you
Okay,
have suggestions?
I have a lot. I have lots, and thank you for asking that question. That's cool. Um, so I'm going to speak on the rural part. My kids largely don't practice, and instead of being mad about it, I embraced it and said, okay, that drives my programming. I'm not going to pick anything that has more than 8 measures of music that you have to work out on your own. That takes a lot of time to find lit. So I created a skill building program in my class. And so I have a 90-minute block, but I did the same thing when I had 45. We just had to play a lot easier music. Every class, we start off with a concert F. So this is band, very basic, brass is buzzing. We do concert F. We play it just to get the instrument going. We do an articulation study, same one every day. Um, After that, we do Remington exercises. We use the Foundations for Superior Performance book or the Habits book, and we do a whole tone scale.
Mhm.
Brass buzz, all of that stuff. We sing it. I got that from my student teacher this semester, and it's transformational. We do a lip slur, and the woodwinds do some technical study. Every band class has a method book. We count, sing, and play a line every day. Um, and every band has a technical studies book. And it takes us the better part of 30 to, in my top band, in my wind ensembles, 30 minutes of work. And then in my youngest band at the beginning of the year, it's 45 minutes of work. It's a long time. And I have to convince the kids fundamentals are important. And I was like, fun is part of the word fundamental. Find a way to make it fun. But every time we do something new, or we do scales as well. And I don't deviate on that until 3 days before LGPE. I'll pull away from that. But it's the same order, the same things every day. And the teacher has to buy into it. We can't let them slide with being George Jetson. George Jetson, just like, his job was just pushing that button, and kids will sit there and play long tones and be checked out. And you have to insist that they do things right. And eventually they get to a point where they come to expect it, and they come to like it. But every time we get to a new skill, or we just did 6-8-3-8 in my concert band this week. I give them some community time to talk about what they're about to learn. Then we do it, and then I give them a chance to practice it. Again, we got a 90-minute block, so I got all kinds of time to do that.
Sure.
On a 45-minute block, when we did, I would do the same things. They wouldn't get as much practice time, and we progressed a little slower. All that meant was the music I had to play was easier. But that's important. I think when I went through high school, we were teaching music through performance. I never
Sure.
scale. I never played a long tone. I came in, warmed up, and we just got beat down in music. Kids can't transfer when you do that. And I started my career like that, and largely was frustrated a lot because they could play Fortress, but they couldn't transfer what they learned in the Tekeli Fortress to Beauty and the Beast that spring. So I had to force myself to go, okay, your kids aren't practicing. Largely, some of them have jobs. Some of them are busy with school. Some are lazy. Let's just be real. So I have to practice for you. And then, and it took me a minute to marry myself to this idea. Dr. Belle McCroy taught with me at Cedar Shoals, and she would play out of a method book for 42 minutes of a 45-minute class. And I was like, this is torture. But after I figured out the benefits of that, I was like, let me steal this and take a Appalachia with me. And it's great. And the kids are going to say they're bored, and that's fine. They don't know what boredom is. Honestly, and I tell my kids that a lot, especially my freshmen. I was like, you don't know what it's like to be bored. I grew up without a cell phone.
I mean,
right? I was like, just do this right, and it goes faster. So it's that idea of the spiral curriculum. And so
sure.
I try to tie that warm-up stuff to their music as quick as I can.
And I'm sure that when we look at Dr. Belle McCroy, and I'm thinking specifically of my husband's band at Houston County High School, that when we teach and we warm up in this way, then the music becomes easier. So they don't need as much, drill and kill in the music rehearsal because they have the concepts.
Yes, and the kids realize for me, it takes about a year to get them there. They realize it's more fun. More fun to play because I'm not fussing about this is how you finger F sharp. I'm fussing about can we play it with this style? What style do you want the music to be in? How should we shape this phrase? And with younger kids, you're always going to have to say, make sure you're always playing with a good sound. Let's listen and play in tune, but we're not fighting rhythms and things like that. And the whole process is more enjoyable.
Sure. All right. Well, do y'all have any last questions, or Dion, do you have anything, like any last things to say before we close out for today?
I mean, my last thing is, if you're pre-service and you're going to take a job in a rural community, or if you already teach there, learn to love it. I grew up in a town near an Air Force base. So, but it was a pretty rural community, and I loved it. I love, learn to love the fact that you're going to go to Publix and see somebody who knows you. Love the fact that those challenges that you face with scheduling and time and instruments and money and all the things is well worth it. These kids benefit a lot from what we have to bring to them. And that's what I got.
All right, Victoria and Solange, do you have any last minute or final questions?
No final questions, but I kind of chuckled a little bit when you mentioned don't take the J.W. Pepper labels, because sometimes they can be a little confusing. When I did a research paper for a class and all these labels, and I'm looking, it's like some of these are not like the other.
Yeah.
Some of these pieces are not like the other pieces. So I appreciate just hearing your thoughts. And I didn't actually know about the bestseller, like actually going to the best. I guess you mentioned it was the bestseller tab
Yeah,
instead
there's
of.
a tab that says like newest alphabetized bestseller. And I was
Mhm.
like, I found bestseller and I was like, wow, if a bunch of people bought it, it should be okay.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Oh,
I've run into a dud or two doing that sometimes though.
no, but thank you for mentioning that on that website.
All right.
All right, thank you, Mr. Muldrow, for presenting and sharing your knowledge with us. And thank you, Victoria and Solange, for spending your Saturday with us. Y'all have a wonderful day.
Enjoy your weekend.
Bye-bye.
Hey, thank you.